As Alan mentioned, I'm Captain Tortora from the Naval Academy. I'm the director of the Center for Cybersecurity Studies and the chair also of the new cyber science department we've created to try to provide a home for cyber studies in different areas. I was going to give an overview and at some points go into a little bit deeper, but we'll go wherever you guys want to go, about how we're training our students. So if you're familiar, many of you should be familiar with the Naval Academy just down the road in Annapolis. We have 1,100 students every year, and a couple of years ago we decided as a Navy that they needed to be aware of cyber security, not just protection online, but how communications, how everything's protected. So we went ahead and created 2 mandatory courses, and I'll talk a little bit about that and be happy to show you some of our coursework. But we decided as a Navy that this was important, and as you heard, Alan's also working with West Point on other issues. So the military sees this as a place that we need to invest a little bit more time. So this isn't a test, but so what do all these pictures have in common, if you can see it? People, yeah, sort of. So you got a midshipman talking on a phone, cell phone, aircraft in flight in tight formation, a ship receiving some supplies at sea, a submarine at periscope depth, a battle group, and then a Marine in the field. So, well, they're all using some type of electronic communications. They're all wireless. They're all networked. So it's going somewhere, traveling through this cyberspace. Is the information secure? Can it be detected? Does it need to be encrypted? Are there servers? But this is all fleet operations, what we do outside once the midshipmen graduate. So this is key for us to understand, for them to understand when they get to the fleet, when they become Marine officers or naval officers, how that communications are being protected. And what's in their future is probably the same as in those of you in their 20s or younger. This is your future as well. A lot of unmanned autonomous operations. You guys have probably seen it in movies, and in real life you may have seen some. But these are actually some tools the Navy is using right now. Unmanned vehicles, unmanned helicopters, unmanned aircraft taken off of aircraft carriers flying in formation with manned aircraft, unmanned boats patrolling waterways. You can't really see this one, but this is an unmanned little submersible. Can go underwater, do a number of pre-programmed searches for mines, for other things, and then come back and then on different occasions communicate back to the ship or back to its home base. Also, all wireless, needs some kind of network protection, and so something that our students, and probably some of you, probably will focus on a little bit more than my generation did. So another question for you. So what are these and what do they have in common to cyber studies? Anyone know what's on the right? Sextant. What's on the left? GPS receiver? Close, GPS jammers. These are all GPS jammers that you can buy online, mostly from a country in Eastern Asia. The top one plugs into your lighter. It can probably has about a 30-40 meter range. The one on the right probably has about a 300 meter effective range, which is how many feet? 1,000 or so, right? So why do I have these 3 in the sextant together? Because if any one of these is operating and you're on a ship, you can no longer use your GPS, so you have to start using that, which is a sextant, which is not what we like to use anymore because it's cumbersome, you have to use tables. But this is actually a key, when we look at our threats, when we operate at sea in close proximity to shore, if someone's using a GPS jammer 300 meters away, if you're in a choke point that may only be 2 miles wide or 3 miles wide, you could lose your GPS signal. And at night, that could be difficult and problematic because at night you can't typically use a sextant very rapidly to get your position. Now assume that these are commercial. Let's take a look at what the adversary might have in the military side of GPS jamming. So this is jamming the signals. There's other ways you can actually take out the GPS satellite. But, 10 years ago, the Naval Academy stopped teaching how to use this device because we thought the GPS was the way to the future. We have other ways to get our positions on a ship or a submarine. So we actually stopped teaching midshipmen how to use the sextant. So guess what we're doing next year? We're going back to teaching midshipmen how to use a sextant, because if you can buy this for $300, imagine what you could buy for $3,000, a device that may be jamming for a mile or so or something in space. So we're going back to teaching our students how to use a sextant. Yes?
In the coverage of the war in Iraq, it was covered that they can identify GPS jammers and then drop bombs on them, and then GPS is back online again.
Yes. That works if you're at war with someone. If you're not at war with someone, you can't drop a bomb on that jammer.
True, that would cause an incident.
Yeah, right. So we wouldn't necessarily drop a bomb. There was you could probably look it up online a couple years ago. I think Newark and Airport, New Jersey, every so often during the day, they'd find a signal was being jammed, the radars were being, the airport radars were being affected by some type of jamming device, and they found that somebody had one of those lighter ones in his car because he didn't want his boss seeing where he was driving the GPS-enabled vehicle. He was going to go out and do whatever he was doing. But that was causing some conflict with the radar. So yes, in Iraq, if we found someone was trying to jam a signal to use as an IED, if you're familiar with that, people are using cell phone and other ways of communicating to enable an IED. So we would actually jam those signals, or we would use the signal to prosecute the target. But we won't do that in the Strait of Hormuz, where we're not at war with anybody. However, so the point of this slide was we're actually going back in time a little bit to ensure that we have redundant capability to figure out where our ships are, especially with an adversary that has very skillful tools, or even a simple one that can buy these online. You can buy this small one for, I think, $50, put in your car. Not sure why you need it. I think it's not necessarily totally legal, so I'm not recommending you do it. But you can look up these online. So that's important to know how the Naval Academy is taking the serious matter of cybersecurity. Is that it's not just coding, it's also the signals and how it's traveling in space. So we're teaching midshipmen again, much to their chagrin, how to use sextants and celestial navigation to figure out their position. It's much easier to use GPS, right? Magellan, whatever you have, it's much, much easier. So bottom line up front, at the Naval Academy, all midshipmen now take 2 mandatory courses in cybersecurity. They're 3-hour credits, 3-credit courses, one in their freshman year and then one in their junior year, and I'll go a little bit into that and I'd be happy to answer questions. We created a cyber operations major 2 years ago. We'll have our first group of seniors in the class this coming fall, and I'll talk about that a little bit as well as why we took that track versus some other maybe tracks that some other schools are. And the military does consider cyber as an operational domain, meaning we all the services need to be understand how we use that to our advantage, to how do we protect it, how can we use that as a skill. So just like the midshipmen learn about land navigation, weapon systems, flying planes, they also now learn about the cyber domain and how we might be able to use that. As the director of the Cyber Center, this is my mission, basically educate the midshipmen on a broad range of cyber-related affairs. Both some of it goes to the technology, some of it goes to the social human factors, but it's a broad scope. It's not just only in the classroom as well. We need to look at in their summer training, when they're getting on ships and aircraft and with Marine squadrons, how they use cyber in an operational domain. The Iraq one's a great point. The Marines had learned a lot about how to, in an urban environment, if terrorists were using signals to light off an IED, they learned quite rapidly how to then try to defeat those signals by jamming them. But the cycle was very fast. The adversary would learn very fast which signals we could jam, we could not jam, and then they would move faster. So it was a quite difficult project, but we try to get that somewhat into the midshipmen's curriculum as well. At the Naval Academy, we take what we call an all-many-few approach. We know not every college can have the same amount of, we can dictate that all midshipmen will take certain courses. But so at our school, we decided all of them we're going to get no matter what, professional training in cyber security, and then 2 mandatory classes. So we just made that mandatory. The midshipmen will graduate in 4 years no matter what, with about 150 or so credit hours total that they'll take. About 90 of those are similar to everyone, and the other 50 or so are based on their major. So of those core courses, cyber is now considered 2 of the core courses that all midshipmen take.
What subjects, if any, were displaced by the inclusion of cyber?
So the PLEP course was added, so it was 3 hours added to the total graduating credits. So that was just added, stuffed in, so to speak. And then the junior course was a EE related communications course, but it was just modified So we actually modified the course. It was usually a comms class about how waves propagate in space, decibels, AM, FM, so they learn about signals in the fleet. We just added a little bit about the mobile networks and networking, and I'll go into that. But so the first one was just added to the curriculum. The second one was a modification of an existing class of the WE department. The many, we're just starting this now since we have new major projects that midshipmen can focus on. Electives, we're creating electives. Any department, the Naval Academy can create an elective. I'll find some funding for them to, it can be in the English department. It doesn't have to be technical. Those of you that are online, and all of you are, you know that cyber is not just a technical, a coding issue. Some of it is social, human factors, how you spear phishing, how you attack problems. And we do have a cyber warfare club where the midshipmen can both do competitions, and they can also have guest speakers to talk about how cyber is viewed in the industry. We do have a lecture series, and anyone in this room can attend them. There's usually about 3 big ones in the fall and 3 in the spring, and I'll talk a little bit about them. We have speakers like Kevin Mandia, the director of NSA, former director of National Intelligence, authors as well. And then at the top, the very few, we have a cyber operations major, and right now the number is probably less than 100 in the major. And then we do have cyber internships. We'll have about 30 midshipmen. Actually, we do have 30 midshipmen at NSA right now, fully embedded in NSA, and we'll have a handful at private contractors like Booz Allen, Lockheed Martin, GE, Boeing, and others. So just a small number. And then there's an annual cyber defense exercise with NSA runs against all 3 service academies. They set up a cell, and each academy has to defend a network that NSA, the professionals, are trying to get in, and they get in. So it's a matter of who can defend the network the most. And the Naval Academy did win this year for the first time in 5 years, so we're pretty happy about that. So our plebe course, so the freshman course. So as I mentioned, not every school can have the same approach that we can, where you can make it mandatory. And I don't think there's many schools that have a mandatory cyber awareness. They more or less have some type of information assurance course you have to take to get access to the network. And that may be an hour long or maybe 30 minutes long. We decided full board to go out on a 3-hour course. And so it's mandatory, started with the class of 2015 who just graduated last month. So those are the first officers to hit the Marines and the Navy with this new education. So we won't really know the effect that they'll have in the fleet for a couple of years, but I'm pretty sure they already know. They're well versed on safety on the internet, how information moves, how to protect the information, how things are vulnerable. So what the course focuses on is cyber operations, and that's kind of loosely defined. But it's a lot of current events. So in my class, usually the first thing I start off with is a current event. And as most of you are aware, there's a current event every day on cyber. Every day. So if my students want extra credit, I'll have them give a quick 2 or 3 minute intro on a cyber topic. But the topic has to be less than 48 hours old. And never have they had a problem finding a cyber topic less than 48 hours old. If you haven't seen, the OPM is finally announced that 4 million federal employees had all their information. I don't know if I'm one of them yet. All compromised by what they're claiming is a Chinese actor. Probably a good chance that it's true. But that's a big topic. But if you maybe look 3 or 4 articles down, you probably find another topic of cyber, some hacking or some other company's been breached. So all of our courses are unclassified. So actually, we use what's in the press or what you guys just talk about, the Sony, the Target, the Home Depot, you name it. And they're good because the midshipmen are reading that as well. They want to, is my iPhone, was my information in the cloud taken as well? So we use a lot of current events, and then we go a little bit deeper during the coursework. There is a technical emphasis. Some of you in this audience are the same age as our students. Our students are very bright, cream of the crop, all technical, but not maybe in my class, and it's not a very scientific poll, but maybe 1 out of every 20 has some coding experience. And so that's not a very big number. And so we actually have to start with the basics of what cyber is, what computing is. A lot of hands-on experience, and then when we can, we tie it to topics in the fleet. This is a very busy slide, but I'll walk you through it. We've broken up the class into 3 segments. The top is basically defining what cyber is. And so the midshipmen on the very first week, we learn about zeros and ones, how information is moving on the internet. And some of the older generation think when I was a midshipman, I thought I knew what zeros and ones were. but I'm finding that the students don't really know that. So we actually go very deep, very basic computing. The second week, we actually get them with desktops, turn it on, and then they have to turn off, take it apart successfully, put it back together successfully, and then turn on the computer successfully to complete the lab. But in the process of learning about what does RAM look like, what is the CPU, what is the hard drive, how does information move from the motherboard to others. So we actually get them into it. And so some of them actually have never seen a desktop at this point in their lives. When they were young, their parents had already moved on to laptops or they moved on to tablets. So actually it's interesting to see that dynamic. Feel like a dinosaur. Some of you guys may not have seen it. I'm sure in a couple years, some of the midshipmen will never have seen a mouse. But we're going to make them still get into the computer to see how things move. It backs up the movement of information from the different components. And then we talk about systems overviews. These are all freshmen, so we just go to the basics of what operating system is. And it's usually I'll have them pull up their phones and different operating systems, whether it's Android or iOS. But we go into just the basics of what the difference are between a Windows command prompt and a Unix command prompt. And then the basics of coding and scripting. Yes?
So Bob, the question, I was noticing that this assumes something at the very start, right? So are we essentially talking to people who come in with some kind of a STEM background? Are all midshipmen?
So this is 100% of midshipmen are getting this. So
But are the midshipmen coming in, do they all have like certain level of STEM preparation in high school or?
I'd say
Can I take, if I'm thinking about UMBC and saying I want to create a freshman year experience, which we want to do in cybersecurity, and I start there, I can see a bunch of majors just like not enrolling in this at all.
So we don't. I'd say our average midshipman is a more of a STEM individual,
Okay.
but we don't use that criteria when we bring them into the Naval Academy. But we do. I think I can pull up the statistics of the last incoming class about their SAT scores. But typically, it's an average of upper 600s in math and mid 600s on verbal on just the two devices. But we don't specifically go for STEM majors. So this course is 100% for everyone. Even the future English majors and history majors at the Naval Academy will take this, and it is painful for them on some occasions. But those that want to be cyber majors or computer science or information technology, they love this course. They eat it up because it's something relevant. It's something that they can get their hands on. And we do a lot of hand-holding, a lot of script kiddie, type this in, see what happens. But those that get it say, can I do the following? Can I attack the network? Can I take down the server? And we use a virtual environment so we can let them have at it. And those that want to be English majors will suffer through it, but the technology ones will actually, those are the ones we actually then start harvesting to see if they want to be in a more technical field. So the basics of coding, actually we just use simple Java scripting. We don't go into any details, but we just do simple Java scripting because the next step is actually building a web page and then seeing how vulnerabilities can be put into a web page. If it's accepting inputs, if it's got data that might be attacked. So we just use simple Java scripting. Make them build a web page from scratch. There's no front page editor or software. They have to do the actual tags so that they can once again see how information can be hidden inside a web page. So they actually have to go through that. And we actually tell them to put a couple things in it that we want them, a banner that says US Naval Academy, or scroll. But in it, there's a Trojan that at some point after if their web page is graded, it's going to take down their web page. So we show them also not to trust information even if it's from your professor, information you're using to rely on your web page. We then talk about scripting, server side versus client side, what's on your laptop versus what's on the server. And we show them a couple different techniques on web injection attacks, how that can work. And we have plenty of daily examples. There was a Navy, we can't really go into it, but there was a Navy intrusion last year, actually 2 years ago, by the Iranians. In the press, you can read some of it. So we can use some of that because it was along the lines of injection attack. Hoff, are you going to go into some of those attacks in your demo? So the demo that Techman Hoffmeister will run, he runs the course. He's going to show you a couple things, how we give them hands-on. The networking basics, so we go through some of that. We use the 5-stack, if you're familiar with that, the basics of information flow. And then wired to wireless networks, which I think is one of the better labs that we do. We actually make them wire a network, a small network on their own, and then they join a network of others through a router, so we can get a mini internet to talk about how information flows and who's on their network and who's not. The following week we go to wireless, and then we show them the vulnerabilities of passwords, about how encryption works, and how likely it is that if their home network's more than a couple of years old, whenever Verizon or Comcast set it up, they can use a default password, or they can set the encryption at WP versus WPA2. And so for my class, I give them extra credit when they go home for Thanksgiving or spring break to see if their home network is secure. But we talk about how information is secure, how free Wi-Fi is not free Wi-Fi, how they can be spoofed. We'll use some demos where we can show them how I create their WP encryption. I think the last time I did it was 7 seconds. I broke the WP encryption using backtrack software. So we show them how vulnerable it is. We do have some midshipmen, and they're like you. In the summertime, they go all over the globe, and we have them going to some countries of interest. And I always tell them that if you're going to bring your laptop, assume your laptop is compromised, and you'll never be able to plug it back into the Navy network. But we show them why that can happen, even if it's free Wi-Fi or secure, that it's going to be compromised. So the first section, pretty wide range, but it's pretty in-depth. The second one, we go into more of the information assurance security aspects of networking. So we learn a bit about encryption, what it is. They start with the basics, and we don't make them do too much, but we want them to ensure what symmetric encryption, what asymmetric encryption. And so we give them examples of how you know a site's trusted, and then how you can trust a site that may not be trusted based on where it is. What hashing is, what passwords are. Some of these topics can be multi-week, if not an entire semester-long topic, but we just give them the basis of what hashing is and how that can relate to passwords, why your password length, the longer it is. We go into a quick math example of why the longer it is with the different values and symbols can be much stronger. Digital cryptography, show them how you can actually authenticate emails, websites, information as much as we can. We do a lab where we can actually set up they have a web page and they actually assign a digital certificate so that it can get the green lock of assurance up in the URL. But we also show them how it's not necessarily always 100%. More on security and firewalls. When we can, steganography is the art of hiding information inside other information. It's open, you can read about it in the press. Al-Qaeda was doing this, so was Taliban, so we use examples of how you can take a picture as an attachment, but within it, you can actually have a lot of files, targets, information, maps of bases, whatever, just based on what terrorists were doing. And then find out how to do a risk assessment. The last segment of the class is actually pretty interesting. We'll set up virtual networks, and then they'll learn how to basically, we'll break up each class into 2 segments, and then they each have a virtual network to protect and the other network to attack. And they'll, just the basics, but they'll learn how to probe it, do a recon, seeing what kind of traces they might leave if they're trying to see what else other networks have. And then the culmination lab, the last lab of the class, is basically they have an hour to protect their network, to get rid of useless logins, to change passwords, set up their firewalls, and then the last hour is just a all-out war against the other team to do a denial of service, to face their web page, all the things you read about, to see if they can get to that point. And then right at the last 5 or 10 minutes of the class, I'll give them a 0 day and say, okay, you both have a 0 day, see if you can implement it against the other team. So it's actually pretty fun for some of them. It's probably too tight for a 2-hour segment because there's a lot going on. But that's the culmination of everything that we taught in the class. So we'll teach half the 1,100 of them take this in the fall, and the other half take it in the spring. Questions on the Fleet Cyber class? Hoff may talk a little bit about it, but you can find this online, the actual the course. We have all the content at www.usna.edu/cs/SI110. This is the actual course. You can see it online. We have it. It's open. We're the DoD. We're pretty open about this. If you get to the course, you can get the calendar. We haven't updated for the fall, but you can actually see each course. Click on the student notes. These are the student notes for the day. And then you can see their homework. Homework for the day was cyber. You can go through each of the lectures. Digital data, what zeros and ones are. We actually make them do a little math of how do you get to, how do you convert binary to decimal, and back. This pains some of them, but we want them to understand how it all works. So if you're interested, you can actually pull this up from your home computer, from your school computer, and you're more than welcome to borrow, steal, take. If you want to use the course, I think it's Lieutenant Hoffmeister runs the course. He'd be happy to give you the instructor notes, which are, the midshipmen can't see the instructor notes, but you can see these if you're interested in some of the modules. We'll be happy to help you out. And then there's an outline that goes over all the topics as well. So we're in our 5th year of running this. We do modify it a little bit every year, but it's a pretty good course. It was actually built by our computer science department. We've assumed control over it just to broaden it a little bit and give some of the Navy context to it, but it's still taught by both those in the computer science department and some other instructors, even one from the math department and my staff. The second course that the midshipmen take is a little bit more technical. They take it as a junior. Once again, this is all the graduate, all of those in the Naval Academy except the cyber majors and the computer science. They'll take a little bit harder course, as well as what we call it. We have a systems engineering. They'll take a little bit harder course. But the rest of the majors, from the English majors to the naval architects, will take the second course, as I mentioned earlier. This was created out of an electrical engineering course on communications, which is important for future naval officers. You remember my first slide about how does information move. So we just modified that course a bit more. The Navy considers the electromagnetic spectrum a domain in cyber, how information moves. To relate to you, if a missile's coming at a ship, there's a way to defeat that missile without having to shoot it down. You can send impulsive signals to defeat that. So that wasn't called cyberspace or cyber operations 10 years ago, called electromagnetic warfare. But now it's what we consider the broader umbrella, because that is signals. You can send zeros and ones down into its microprocessor, and you can actually do what's called a soft kill. So the midshipmen learn a little bit about that, about how waves propagate, how signals propagate, and how you can use simple codes to perhaps defeat a weapon before having to shoot it down. A soft kill is preferred over a hard kill because even if you shoot a missile 1,000 meters away, there's enough momentum that you may get some of that still hitting your ship. So a soft kill further off will make it go into the water or veer off. So the use of the electromagnetic spectrum is also part of the Navy's vision of what cyber is. So we include that as part of this course as well. So the course is pretty much broken up. I've broken up into 2 segments. If you saw the curriculum, it looks like it's broken up into 3. But the first one is a little bit more into cybersecurity, more on the network side, more on communications, how information is protected. They'll do a little, this class meets twice a week for I think an hour and a half or 2 hours, and basically an hour of lecture and then an hour of lab. The midshipmen have their own, every midshipman has a laptop that they're assigned when they come in, and that is their equipment for the course. So they'll run code, they'll see if they can do simple hacks, and then the second part they'll actually go into what I was talking earlier, how the Navy views the electromagnetic spectrum. But they'll take little remote cars and you can control with your little handheld thing. But they'll be able to inject code to make it turn left or right. So they'll see how we can make simple signals affect the outcome of a device. Ultimately, actually, in the not too distant future, we'll probably get some mini drones and do the same thing out in both airborne drones and perhaps those for the water. And same thing, we'll try to play with the signals to show how you can manipulate signals. The display might show that it's on a certain level or doing something, but it's actually doing something totally different. So they can understand a little bit more about control systems and how they could be spoofed or modified so that the operator doesn't know what's going on. This one is a more technical course. You have to solve equations in this one because it also still has to cover enough about the communications when they get to the fleet. And this one is actually run still by the EE department. 2 years ago, we created a cyber operations major. So we had thought about a new cybersecurity program, a major, but it was, no offense to the computer scientists in the group, it just smelled like another computer science track. And so we wanted to make it something different that was had a little bit of what we're seeing in cyber operations, the broader picture of cyber operations. So it wasn't just necessarily a lot more coding or a lot more network security. We wanted to make a break and make something new. So we came up with what we call cyber operations. So we have 27 in the senior class that are the coming senior class that are in the major, and that's about there's around 30 to 40 midshipmen as average per major, so we're okay with that. We have 50 in the class of 2017, so that's actually above average, and then 30 selected last year, so back to just below the average. So there's 26 different majors at the Naval Academy that they can choose from. So we're just at the low end of the average of how many midshipmen in a major. The IT major has about 15, so we're actually double the IT major. But we thought this major should have a little bit about the social and human factors. If you, depending on which source material you read, 69% of all hacks start with a human in the loop. There's something a human did to click on the link. Probably the OPM one, I'm sure, was a spear phishing, and somebody clicked on a link. So actually go into that, the social factors of cyber operations. So that doesn't fall nicely into the EE or computer science as a course, human factors. So this one is actually taught by non-technical folks. We taught it for the first time this past semester, but we go into certain things like what is anonymous, what drives them, what's driving people to join ISIS based on social, what they're seeing on the internet. So that course is pretty unique. We're going to work on it again this summer, but we also thought that there should be a policy and a law classes. So there's actually 3 non-technical classes in this major. So the social factors, policy class, and the law and ethics class. We thought that was important enough to be, for cyber operations, a broader view of how does policy affect, whether it's policy at a company, policy at the nation state, policy global. We thought they should understand a little bit about that. And then law and ethics, about what is ethical and lawful. So we've actually hired a lawyer who will be the first lawyer on our staff who will be there for tenure. And his challenge is to take the law course, apply it to cyber. He's a privacy and data security lawyer with a private firm coming to our staff. So it's not necessarily what NSA does, but it's a broader view of what are the legalities of what can and can't be done. A lot of discussions you may hear is when a company gets attacked, the company wants to attack back, right? That's a bad idea, especially if the attackers in Eastern Asia. That'll be the last time that company's online, probably. But that's companies want to know, can they attack back? And so what are the legalities of that? In the Navy, our example is if you're an Exxon tanker off the coast of Somalia and pirates come, we can't actually start protecting you unless those pirates attack you physically. If they're just buzzing around your ship, the Navy can't step in and do anything. Once they attack you, by UN law, any nation that has a vessel at sea is going to protect you. So it's a vague analogy, but how does someone defend Sony if Sony offends North Korea? How do you defend that as a nation? So these are complex questions that aren't answered. So if you're going to go into cyber law, you probably have a great opportunities to make a lot of money because it's a field that is undefined, but a lot of challenges, especially when companies want insurance. How do you insure data? How do you ensure you're not going to get hacked? So we thought that a law class would be key. So the rest of the classes are very traditional, more on the information security, network security. So the rest of the stuff, they'll actually go in depth. They'll learn data structures, programming. They're going to learn C and Python. Those of you aware, there's something called ABET accreditation. So we'd like to have this accredited by ABET under a general computing with the criteria right now. So we follow those guidance on number of languages, number of courses. And so the rest of the courses are very technical, but 3 of them are non-technical. And we hope to tie it together. We're still haven't graduated our first class, so that'll be this next year. But their capstone course will be actually bringing these all together to include ideas such as, if you've been to Annapolis, we have these little gray boats. Anyone seen them at Annapolis? The little gray boats, we call them the Yard Patrol craft. But looking at vulnerabilities on those vessels. They have a Raytheon radar, they've got Lockheed Martin this or that, Booz Allen something. Are they connected? And then if the midshipman, by observing it from a distance, if they see what kind of radar it is, they can look online. What type of code does it use? And then if they can guess what other systems are on the ship, maybe they can come up with an idea of how to get in without getting on the ship. And then we'd like to progress it where at some point they become a visitor to this foreign vessel, look on it, walk around the ship, and then see other systems, what the controllers are, and then maybe plan on how they might try to get on it and via code to affect it. It was in the press. You can look it up. Admiral at the U.S. Navy Admiral talked about diesel generator they put on submarines, the Caterpillar diesel engine. And when this diesel engine was plugged in, turned on, and connected to the internet, it would send something back home to headquarters in Caterpillar to say, hey, update my software. Well, the Navy didn't know this was happening. It would just do it, but it was riding the network on the nuclear submarine to radio home saying, update my software so I can run more efficiently. Well, we didn't know that at the time, but interestingly, you think someone would have checked that. It wasn't checked at the time. They thought it was a way of enhancing the efficiency of the Caterpillar diesel engine. However, we now check for things like that, but we didn't 15 years ago. We were assuming that was something you're just okay to do. Not so. So some things like that we're trying to embed into this major. So the Navy's come up with a term called cyber-safe. If you're familiar, before many of your time, the U.S. submarine sank in the early 1960s, the U.S. Thresher, and they found, based on what they could find at the bottom of the seafloor, was that some welds may have failed, causing massive flooding, which impacted the submarine and sank below crush depth. But the welds weren't inspected, so we came up with a term called sub-safe. So anything you do on a submarine that affects the life of the submarine has to have a quality assurance process and has to be called sub-safe. So the Navy's using that term now called cyber-safe. So if there's anything that touches a network that is important to the Navy will be cyber-safe, meaning it's not going to be able to dial back to Caterpillar headquarters to update software. It'll have to be vetted. Any connections in and out of the tool, the device, the router, the plugs, the wires, the machine will have to be verified, validated by a Navy, the Navy Sea Systems Command, which we weren't doing just 3 years ago, to be honest. So these majors get a little taste of that, but they'll focus on the broader picture of what a cyber operations is. So we're still evolving, as I mentioned. This is our first class. We'll graduate next year, so we have one more year of this class. So far, a lot of positive discussions. A bunch of them are at NSA this summer. I took 8 of them to Europe last week to the cyber conflict conference in Estonia, where they could get a view of what international aspects of cyber are. And I took them to England, to Bletchley Park. I'm sure some of you are familiar with Bletchley Park. Took them there to see what a cyber operations would have been in the early 40s, cryptography, breaking codes. And then we went to Normandy to see how we spoofed the Germans into not anticipating the location by signals. So, but the folks in this major are pretty unique, and they've got a broad view of a pretty interesting topic. This is probably more of an eye chart, but this just shows you the coursework this is their sophomore year. And the Naval Academy Midshipmen don't actually get into their major until their sophomore year. And so there will be one course that you take in the fall with it's Python. So they'll learn Python language and learn some different tools. The second semester they have a math course dedicated to what we think is important for the major. A cyber engineering course where they learn the fundamentals of something, SCADA systems, PLCs, how to control it, and then a programming course which Lieutenant Hoffmeister teaches at C. Then they're going to data structures, and then systems architect, where they'll learn about the basics of from the board up, how do you build a computer, and how can you be sure that those components are valid. So this goes back to the cyber-safe program, the supply chain. How do you trust your computer? Up till 3 years ago, we were buying the Midshipmen Lenovo laptops. We no longer do that. So we use that as a case study. The spring they'll take the first course, the non-technical course at the top of the red, but they'll have more courses. The CS and the print in parentheses shows you that there's different departments that actually teach these courses. We don't yet have a full staff that can teach these, so I rely on the CS department, the comp sci department, and then the EC. We have a separate computer science department and electrical and computer engineering department, but they have a hand in this. The CCSS is my staff, and then so we rely on it. And then they'll have the policy and law course in their seniors when they have a broader view of it. Midshipmen also take a course on what's called law of armed conflict, so they'll learn about how you use law and war together. But this then ties into that as well. And then they can take any 2 electives that have a cyber flavor, and I decide what cyber flavor is. So if the English department wants to run a course on the Arab Spring and the Twitter revolution, I think that's cyber enough for a non-technical elective. We'll approve that. But I just need a professor of any department to approach me and say, I'd like to try my new elective, and let's see how it works. And then if it works, I'll seek funding to keep it going, and then hopefully make it part of the larger curriculum that any midshipman can take. This is just some verbiage on the actual courses that they'll take. The blue is technical, the red is the non-technical. Electives, we're still developing them. And then the bottom right, lots of possibilities for them in the summer. Our students, yes, ma'am.
Just to go back on slide for the math course, I was curious what content.
So that's, Hoff, is it a discrete math?
It's primarily discrete math.
We'd be happy to send that to you. I think we didn't think there's typically a 4-hour block that the CS and IT majors. We brought it down to 3-hour, but just focused on discrete math. And so we're doing a lot of internships. I'm sure we probably get some mids up here at UMBC. But our midshipmen, if you did know, in the summer, once school ends in May and begins again in August or late August, the summer is broken into 3 months, and so 3 blocks. So 2 of those blocks have to do something professional, learn about ships, learn about doing an internship. 1 block is free. So we're trying to figure out the best way to get these men and women exposure to cyber, not just with DoD, but also with, as I mentioned, Booz Allen, Lockheed Martin. I would love to get one of them at Facebook or Google or something, or Amazon. Yes?
Do you have a project, like senior design component in this program?
So the capstone class, it's in gray. It's basically a 32-week continuum. There'll be small projects, not a big, huge research project. We're not sure yet which way we'll go. I've mentioned looking at the yard patrol craft as a project would be find a vector to get onto this vessel. That was one of those sort of mini projects. I do envision that since the systems engineers and the computer scientists all have, those different majors do have projects, we may do collaborative projects where, let's say, the systems engineer will develop a robot or a drone that does something, and the cyber operations major will look at how to protect it, perhaps how to attack it as if he's trying to fly his drone. The challenge is to bring it down or to divert it. So we don't have large projects yet. This is the first year we'll have seniors, but I have funding to do that, and I still have a lot of staff to run it. But we're thinking we might start with collaborative ones at first. So my staff is actually relatively small. I mentioned I rely on the other departments, but I have maybe less than 10 people dedicated to cyber studies, mostly officers in the Navy with some type of information warfare or information studies background. And then I rely on the other departments. I am hiring a lawyer, and I'm hiring a new PhD in computer science to join my staff full-time instead of relying on the computer science or EE department. And we're going to grow a little bit more. I do have a visiting professor, Mr. Chris Inglis, former deputy director of NSA. It's a pretty significant visiting professor. He's part of my staff. So we're growing. I mentioned we're also going to start a new cyber science department, a full department. So we'll probably put ads out in the fall for any of you working on a PhD to hire someone for the next year under our staff. We do have lecture series I mentioned earlier. Kevin Mandia, if you're familiar with him, we had him come last year, great speaker. But we have them, this is considered part of their class, the plebe class and the junior class. The lecture will take place at lunch. It'll be mandatory, so they'll get a free period that day. And so we've brought in a number of speakers, include Kevin Mitnick, if you know who he is, social engineer. We use some of his work in our social human factors course. He tried to social engineer us, wanted access to our network, wanted to log in, did everything he could to try to get into our network. And those are open to the public. We did get approval for a new building, so if you've been in Annapolis, right now this looks like a parking lot, and then next year it'll start looking like a construction site, and then we're going to get a 5-story building with a classified space, a SCIF, some research area. Still a lot of ideas. I'd love to have a SCADA lab, or I'd like to have a whole bunch of small pumps which the midshipmen can burn up or do things to, do evil things to using codes. We may have mock SCADA labs, we might have real ones, PLC controller labs. But what this building will do is bring in multidisciplines together, the systems engineers, the computer scientists, information technology majors, the electrical engineers, computer engineers, and the cyber majors into one building. Right now we're dispersed in classrooms that were built 70 years ago in some cases, so they don't really allow for great technology advances, so we're going to build this for the next 60 years. And so hopefully once it gets built in 3.5 years, it'll provide a lot more opportunity for collaborative work with all the different majors. I could turn this over to you, sir, in the back about these. So we actually, for those for UMBC, this past year we had 5 collaborative efforts from USNA and UMBC, and we have, I think you're co-PI on all these, or something?
Well, I'm mostly the UMBC co-PI, but there are actual faculty who, I think, before certain legal things can be formalized with ONR and USNA, I am mostly the co-PI.
Yeah. So this is a big success for the Naval Academy and UMBC. The Navy challenged us last fall, to come up with collaborative efforts between our two institutions. They had $1 million or so to provide us for a 1 to 3 year research project. And these are the 5 that made it through. And I don't have the details on all these or who the actual, but I do. You got an expert here. I don't think we've started quite yet, have we, on any of these? Or
So yes, pending a FOIA request clarification from someone in Annapolis newspaper who likes you guys very much. These should roll out, I think, sometime this month.
And there's probably going to be more of these to come. So for USNA, UMBC, and if you're from other institutions, that doesn't mean you're out of the picture. The Navy is very interested in finding and defining new projects, both from protecting our ships at sea to developing new ways to enhance security, both human and others. So we came up with, actually we had, I think, what was the number? We had 15, no, we had 10 proposals. I think it was more, right? But very collaborative, a big success story for the two institutions. And I think it was up to $1 million plus another, up to 3 years of study. So this is very good.
UMBC students can, we should just, since you're plugging this, we should point out that you should be reaching out to the faculty, the announcements will come out, because each of these has 1 or 2 GRAs involved.
Yep.
So if you're looking for these to support.
It's a good deal, I think so. It's a win for both institutions. I mentioned earlier trying to find an academic home for cyber. So there's something called the Cyber Education Project, which has been ongoing for almost a year now. When we asked the question after we started our cyber operations major, who else is doing something with cybersecurity and information assurance? And there's probably about 100 institutions, UMBC included, that are teaching some form, whether it's certificate up through PhD or master's of cybersecurity. So there's about 100 different institutions that are now involved. And this map is actually, we asked these 100 institutions how they define their program. And so the size of the word is the amount of people that said they use that term. So obviously cybersecurity comes up most, but there's a bunch of others: cybersecurity policy, cyber engineering, forensic computing, network defense, cyber defense. So the term that the group has come up with is what they're calling cyber science. And when we drop off the science and add security, the folks that do policy go away, the cyber engineering folks go away. So when we add back science, they come back. So the cyber science is sort of winning the discussion with the ABET and IEEE and ACM folks on perhaps an umbrella term. There's still another year or 2 to go before anyone agrees on it. But it's gaining some momentum as the umbrella term for an academic field that could be accredited. So I put the link at the bottom if you're interested. Those of you on staff and faculty, if you're not involved, you go to this, you can actually join up if I click on the link. You can see how you can get involved with this project. Make sure institutions, if it's not involved, to get involved, or if it is involved and you're not involved, join the team. Because a lot of good discussions on what is cyber. Is it really a field? And believe it or not, there are, as you may can imagine, there are a lot of people saying this isn't a field. This is a flash in the pan. The name will change in 3 or 4 years, perhaps. However, there's enough people are asking for cyber graduates to join their team, whether it's not just network security, but it's also policy, right, and the law aspects of that. So we found that the industry is very interested if we can come up with a term to accredit this, so that if they are hiring a cyber major of any flavor, that they know that they're having a basics of, say, 2 languages, awareness of network security, awareness of physical systems. We don't think our model is the right one, but we hire 100% of our graduates, so we're okay with it not being accredited, but it would be nice to accredit it to provide a stronger academic foundation that we could then collaborate with other efforts. So if you're interested in getting involved, that's the Cyber Education Project. And I think that's all I had. Any questions for me? Hoff, did you want to add anything?
I can go over some details of through some of the SM1C content if anybody's interested.
We're early, aren't we? Oh, go ahead.
I was wondering, do you also maybe intermingle with other agencies, DoD?
So NSA has a College of Cyber. Some of you might be familiar with it. The ADET is their, but they have a College of Cyber, and they also do something called certificate Centers of Academic Excellence for cyber. I think it's information assurance is one of them. Cyber operations is another one. So we work with them a little bit, but we also work with them in the DoD. Part of our task at the Naval Academy and the West Point and Air Force Academy is making sure our junior officers understand the basics of cybersecurity. So we work with NSA's College of Cyber to help define what we call the junior officer competencies. What a junior officer, no matter what uniform they're wearing. So some of our curriculum at all the academies was influenced by those discussions. So we do work with them a little bit with DIA, not much. Mostly NSA, just College of Cyber. Yes.
I just wanted to point out that the Center of Academic Excellence is on their website. It says, refers to that as accreditation by NASA and DHS, so that could be considered an accreditation.
Right, so the ABET wouldn't agree with that, but it is it's a form of validating your coursework, so that if one of your graduates wants to work at NSA, they have that stamp of it saying I was at a CAE for information
There's
assurance.
about 40 of them.
Yep.
Of those, yeah.
One of the questions on the CAE form is your school ABET accredited? So
I haven't seen that form, so yeah.
I have two questions. First, teaching 5,000 students is a lot. Would you please explain a little bit how you ramped up your educational program to that capacity? And second, how are you assessing the effectiveness of your educational program?
Okay. So we, on teaching the 5,000, so what the plebe course is 1,000 a year, and the junior course is another 1,000 a year. So it's 2,000 per year in the cyber curriculum, the core courses, and then it's 1,000 per semester. So the staff works a lot. So the first course, the plebe course, was just added to the curriculum. So that meant that the existing staff took on a little bit of extra load. We typically, military and civilian, like to balance it that I think we're calling it 9 to 10 contact hours per semester is average. So one semester, my Hoffmeister might have 3 classes he's teaching, and the next semester he might have 2. So we ramped up by shifting effort, hiring some new people to cover those courses. So we'll run 30 of the plebe courses in the fall and 30 in the spring. So I have to cover 30 different classes with some instructors, military and civilian, teaching 3, some are teaching 2. The junior course is taught by the DLE department, so we have had to hire in both cases adjuncts to cover it. So sometimes we'll put out calls for adjuncts to assist, and I'm always willing to take adjuncts to help teach the plebe courses. If you have any computing or technical background in the plebe course, we create it so that almost anybody with a technical background can teach it. So we ramped up. Sometimes we do need adjuncts, but we ramped up by basically hiring some new staff, and in some cases overworking for Lieutenant Commander Hoffmeister.
What's the class size typically in that course?
Target is no more than 20. So I think that's the max for any Naval Academy class now, is 20 is the target. So inside the major, the courses are anywhere from 10 to 15 in the major, but the target is 20, no more than 20 in the plebe cyber class. My spring cyber class had 17. So it's, we still want to, our goal is to teach 30 sections of no more than 20 in each class. That's 600 or so. So we hate to make it more. I'm not sure how UABC is. Some institutions have huge lecture halls. We thought this one needed some hands-on. The instructor would say, same time, plug into your network and see what you got. And having 20 people say, I can't find I just downloaded the file. Anyone been there? Can't find it, right? So having 20 freshmen tell you can't find the file is a burden enough. We didn't want to go over 20. A lot of it, so when we say open up a command prompt, even after 3 weeks, they forget how to open up a command prompt. So that's pretty busy. We don't have a lot of lab techs. We have one, right?
Yes, sir.
One for the 30 classes. He's pretty busy. So I don't have, we don't have teaching assistants. So the professors, the tenured professors teaching the class. No TA, no assistants, no postdoc. So it's a lot of, the Naval Academy does focus more on teaching even for full-time faculty. The teaching is first. and then research service comes second. And then the last question is, how do we assess it? A couple times we spearfished them in the fall, sent them a hey free gift card at the Naval Academy gift store obviously from an email that was not from the Naval Academy, and then we assessed it to how many clicked the first link. The second link asked for more data, and then the third link it didn't ask for social security number. The third
It
link,
didn't ask for their social, but they actually had to enter their password. Their
So-
academy password.
so that was one assessment, and it was
There was at least one in almost every section.
so 1 out of 20 still went to the end where they would have given up personal information. That was one assessment that we did. The other assessment is, like I said, the first graduates are hitting the fleet this month, the Navy and the Marine Corps. So that's the biggest assessment that I proposed back to the larger Navy is how are these guys doing the fleet? So hopefully within a year, I get some feedback from commanding officers, our CEOs, to say how are they doing? Is your ship safer? I know you. So you told me to bring my brief on a thumb drive. The military does not use thumb drives. Does anyone know why?
Well, it's VA fault, anyway.
So some back in 2008, you can look it up online. Some soldier or perhaps several put a thumb drive into a classified system, and then the classified system tried to beacon home an IP address on Eastern Europe, and so he shouldn't have put the thumb drive in the secret computer. There was no restriction for using it in your unclassified or personal laptop. No restriction, but he thought it'd be easier to get a picture off of Google Maps, which had a color picture of the downtown of the city, put it into his classified. If you've ever seen satellite imagery, it's not colorful and sexy. It's detailed in black and white. He thought he'd use a sexy Google Maps picture, so he thought he'd switch it over, take a picture, put it into a secret network. And so we found that people were doing this quite frequently. So the thumb drives have auto-run. You've probably seen these and can have lots of things on it. Whether it's true or not, I heard that he also found a thumb drive in a parking lot and thought, well, that's free thumb drive. So he used that. So we don't use thumb drives at all in the entire DoD. No thumb drives are allowed. Matter of fact, if you go to plug in your thumb drive or recharge your phone, the equivalent of a SWAT team comes after you to take away your laptop, take away your iPhone, take away everything. What we call the Navy captain's mask. You're taking the captain's mask. Whippings are not allowed anymore. You probably lose a rank and then they get punished financially. So we don't use any thumb drives so our midshipmen learn about that. So when they get to the fleet, they know why they're not using it. The people in the fleet, all they know to remember is 5 years ago they said stop using thumb drives. There was no explanation of why. So these guys and gals know why not to use thumb drive, not to charge your iPhone in a classified computer system, or even an unclassified one. So the assessment may take a couple years, so I don't have a good answer for that. The spearfishing one was kind of disappointing, but 1 out of 20 was not bad. We probably should have done something at the beginning to test their awareness, to then judge how to do it at the end. But maybe we use the tool you come up with to look at cybersecurity, the multiple choice, maybe before and after, perhaps. Yes?
Captain, one comment and one question. I noticed the Navy put out an RFP for 0 days recently, and I'm curious to see how that works out.
So I haven't seen that.
It's on the internet. I didn't see a price list, so you know what to write. I didn't know. But anyways, it's kind of interesting that they would put out an open request for 0 days on the internet.
Does it say what system? They're just saying 0 days?
I was curious to see what the list was. Spec it out.
I would assume maybe related to ship systems, but it just sounds odd. I don't have to look that one up.
And it leads to a serious question. Dr. Carter has been putting out some guidance out of OSD, asking for a ship to think about cyber resiliency as opposed to just cybersecurity, and for mission assurance, how to achieve cyber resiliency. Has any of that thinking permutated down to the policy or design of any of the coursework or understanding support of the mission in cyber operations, rather than just generic IT security and some of the, how cybersecurity kind of grew up, but rather than support of the warfighter type of things? Is any of that cyber resiliency kind of resonating?
So a little bit sort of my first slide about the sextant, that's resilient.
Supports cyber resiliency.
That's resilient because now we're still able to now we still have other tools you can use to navigate. So slowly it is because of the push to resiliency. The Navy's term I talked about, cyber safe.
Right.
That ensures that you have more redundant systems than the new systems we're putting on, but we're also looking back at the ships that were commissioned 20 years ago to see how resilient they are. We're finding not as resilient as they should be. So it's going to take a little bit of time, especially at procurement, supply chain, investigating current systems. We have put some of that into our coursework, as I mentioned, that the Academy over the summers, sending officers to relearn how to use sextants so that in the fall they can teach the midshipmen how to use sextants. So a little bit, at least at the educational level, yes, we're trying to move towards that. Our cyber physical classes do look at how systems can be hacked, and then what if there's an alternative redundant system. So that in a small sense, yes, we're looking at that, not the larger one.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Hoff can go over some of the classwork, or we can break for whatever you need now.
That would be great to hear some more technical details about what's going on.
Sure, you need laptop still?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Chris is a career ship driver who now is a permanent staff at the Naval Academy with a IT and computer science background.
Morning, Chris Hoffmeister. CAPT Tortora said, been at the Naval Academy for now 4 years. This is going on my 5th. I've been involved with the SI-110 project, the course, since I got to the Academy in August of 2011. I wasn't on the initial design team because I got there after it had already been stood up, but I started teaching it right away. And since I got there, I've been on the design team, and now I'm the lead developer maintainer. So this course, kind of following one of the questions in the back earlier on, yes, this course is public domain. Our tax dollars paid for this course, so we are happy to export this course. I'm going to go off the student version of the website. So again, this is available right now on the public network. What we are also going to give you, or can give you, is basically the entire section. The entire course material, which includes instructor material. So as Dr. Sherman asked, how many sections are there? There's 30 sections every semester. That's a lot. That takes a lot of instructors, a lot of faculty, a lot of different backgrounds. The cyber domain is interdisciplinary. So there, behind the scenes here, there's also a lot of instructor material that shows the instructors how to go through this exercise. This is a very hands-on course. The students come to class with their laptops every day, and they're pretty much on their laptops every day. I'm just going to go through a couple of the activities to kind of show you, again, what the students would be doing in the classroom. So also on the question of, this is for a general student body. We take rough polls at the beginning of the course. 90% of the students don't have much computer background other than the fact that they know how to get on Facebook and they know how to check some Twitter feeds. That's about it. They don't understand many of them don't understand the underlying details. Now, we'll hear some from Loa Bakerfield. Maybe they are leaning forward and trying to get high school students more aware, but still 90% of the ones we're seeing right now come at the undergraduate level don't have much core experience or understanding. And our big focus is, without that understanding, then you can't assess risk. You don't understand the risks that are out there with using that iOS. And, why should I not open that mail.app application email because it's going to get my password and load up a fake password login page. Okay, so we do start with the fundamentals. Digital data, how we can store digital data. I'm going to jump down and I'm actually going to show you some of the programming stuff that we do. Again, it's JavaScript, but walk you through some of the stuff. So early on in the course, we show that yes, you can represent data, anything with a string of zeros and ones. That is news to some of them, new material to some of them. We do use JavaScript as the language, both to show them programs and programming, but then also we do it for the client side and the server side scripting. So they'll see JavaScript a number of different times in this course. We do show them some of the basics. We start off with what programs are, what a computer program statement is, expressions, variables, how they can store data for reuse. Then we quickly go into input and output, how we can prompt users for input and then output data. Basically the standard of a program: input data, process that data, and then output that data. We talk about if statements and conditionals, and then what I was going to go through and just show you a little bit more in depth is actual loops. I'll try to make this a little bigger. Okay, so at this point, they've been introduced to JavaScript. We do a lot of the introduction through the browser web developer consoles. We primarily run out of Chrome. We use Firefox sometimes, and sometimes we use Internet Explorer, but primarily we're using Chrome just through its web developer console, stuff like that. So up to this point, we haven't shown them loops, and we asked them, first, well, how can you get the computer to sum the numbers 1 through 10? Many of them, brute force it and do this. Some of them do give the mathematical equation, the formula. That is good, but not many of them. We introduce them to loops, and this is the new thing with loops. So that's what this discussion is about. We give them basically the syntax. And again, our approach here, our goal is not to turn the students into programmers. We don't give them a blank box on the exam and say, write a program to do X. We would give them code, something similar to this, and ask them, what does this code do? Okay, well, they see the loop, they see it goes through K through 10, and it sums the numbers 1 through 10, something like that. Or we might have them make a slight modification. Okay, instead of the loop being hard-coded to go to 10, prompt the user for the number that they want to sum to. So that's the depth that we're going to with their programming skills in this. So we would just have them run this. We'd talk about the construct of the loop, of how the while is a key word, and then it has that condition, and then it's going to go through the body, the statements in the body, that number of times, or while that condition is met, those statements are going to be executed. So they can run this little button, and you can see the total equals 55. So again, we're just introducing them to the concepts of the loop. So we talk about the dangers of infinite loops, and I'll go ahead and run this since I'm on Chrome, because I can just kill the tab. So this is a problem with this one, is that it's never going to run. Or it will run. Okay, so anybody want to test this? This is where we'd have the students test this as well. This is their hands-on part. They're all going to crash their tab whenever we ask them. So what number should I enter in here? 2, okay. Okay. Any other numbers? Input? So again, our while loop, while k is not equal to n plus 1, go through the sum and the total.
Yes? So I actually just finished taking my JavaScript course last semester where I'm attending. And I'm wondering, to talk about the cybersecurity side of this, since you don't have an else, or if it's not a number input, you then put in like an injection.
Yes, so we do talk about input sanitization a little bit with that. Some of our code, usually this one, will say, okay, yes, you entered in an A. We are typecasting it to a number, so we aren't testing that actually number did typecast. So we will do some, a little bit to say, yes, enter in a number. So still give me a number input, but we do talk about that, yes, input sanitization is a problem, and that's actually where we're going with this scenario right here, is that -1. Any negative number is going to be bad. So I'll catch the fact that it's A, it would not fail as a number, and then it would, the condition would fail. But if I do a -1, what's going to happen? So is -1 a number? Yes. So n's going to be now -1. For those of you who don't know JavaScript, the prompt returns a string, so we're typecasting it to a number. So now is -1. While k is not equal to -1 plus 1, while k is not equal to 0, do the following loop, and then my loop control variable at the end, increment k. Well, k starts at 1, 1 is not equal to 0, I go through, now the next time k is equal to 2, so on and so forth. Obviously, very quickly, we can see that I'm not going to wrap around, and then so basically it's never going to return. My client side, my browser, this specific tab, is now busy trying to calculate the number, the summation, sum of the numbers. Okay, and so that's where we kind of show them that, hey, you have to validate your input, and that's the problem. That's one of the problems here. That's one of the challenges. So I'll just kill this tab. Yeah. Okay, well, that one's still over there. Again, we like to use Chrome because I can kill the tab and not the entire browser session. The students usually get excited at the beginning of the day when you tell them, we're going to break something today. That usually gets them to stay awake. So here's another little problem, little example that we have. We show them binary searches. Basically, this little code, bit of code, picks a random number between 1 and 100, and then they have to guess it. So I won't go through the details of guessing the binary search or leading them to the binary search. It usually takes about 3 to 4 times, maybe sometimes as few as 2 times before the class, again, a section of 20 students, naturally comes to the binary search where they'll choose 50, then 75, so on and so forth. So we go through this one first, and then we show them this version of it. So this version is a little different. It's the same concept, though. So you might have covered eval in your JavaScript course. Eval is a very nice thing. Eval is actually how we're using the rest of this, getting this JavaScript to run. So let's guess a number. So we'll play the guess a number game here. So anybody have a number guess? 50. Okay, so not 50, try lower. 25. Not 25, try higher. 35. Between 35 and 50. 40. Try lower. 37, 38. Try lower, so it's got to be 36. Okay, so again, we'll lead them to that. Now let's run this again. So, the interesting thing here is this line here, right here, with eval guess. Does anybody know what eval does in JavaScript? Sorry? We are doing it on purpose. So this is an injection attack, okay? Eval guess, eval says, take this input and try to evaluate it as JavaScript. And some people say, this is very bad. Well, guess what? It's been around for quite some time. And it came well before JavaScript. Bash has the same functionality, okay? So it's not functionality, it's not new stuff, is basically what I'm getting at. These kind of attacks, these kind of vulnerabilities, these kind of features have been in the environment, in the domain, for quite some time. So this is an injection attack, okay? I can do this a number of different ways. So if I just type in N, I automatically get it right. Because now I'm evaluating guess. Guess is N. N is a variable that's known because that is my number, so I know the number.
You haven't seen the code yet.
Yeah. And so we show them this, like, okay, here's the code. And even if you know eval, if you don't know eval, then you got to go look up and see what does eval do. Okay. Then how can I find this? Okay. But still, this is 4 lessons into 90% of them being introduced to what a programming language is, and they are able to find the vulnerability.
Do any of your programming lessons then turn towards the security angle? So, for example, you give the midshipmen big log files that go extract all the web data or the web traffic.
So,
the outliers, certain IPs. Then just go do like a script as simple grep, let's say, on a large file. A lot of times you have to do a response. Those fire the terminal, create something really quickly, and then parse the data.
Yes. So the best example of that, we don't do it specifically in the example that you stated there, but we do have a digital forensics lab. Part of the digital forensics lab is they're looking through email chains. We are looking at ways to have them actually have to look through the log files for the virtual environment, the network attack section that they actually do. Okay, look at the web traffic logs. We do show them web logs from the actual web server that they are running, that we run, that they attack. So yes, we do go through and show them, here's bad traffic, here's specific web logs. So yes, you can identify, here's the IP address that injected this code, and then you can go on and then do other things with that. Now that you have the IP address, now that's how you set up your firewall rules to block against that traffic.
And in the forensics labs, where they actually use maybe some scripting, some basic scripting or programming to...
So we don't have them go to the level where, again, we're not expecting them to come up with scripts or programs on their own. We would give them, so if we wanted to use the grep example, we'd say, hey, here's what grep is, here's an example for grep. Now you found the log, you found that IP address. Okay, now go take that input and then use it in the associated firewall rule.
That's for the core course for everyone, but inside the major, though.
Yes, definitely inside the major. Inside the major, they go into all those details. They're actually setting up their own firewalls, doing the network traffic, doing the network scanning into that detail. So I like to show my class this one as well. I'm going to run it again. I always like, I just like the number 42. So you can also go the next step, and actually you can make the answer what you want it to be. So now I'm injecting code further into the system and actually manipulating data, not just pulling data out, I'm manipulating the data in the system. So that's kind of one of the good examples.
What would happen if you typed in log out?
Well, this would be nothing because this is all client-side scripting. So this is just running within my browser tab, sir.
There's no way to kill a browser?
Well, I could, I could kill the browser. I could close the tab. I could Alt F4 to quit the entire browser session, the browser program itself on the client. And yeah, we do talk about that. So what are my defenses against this client-side scripting? Well, I could turn off JavaScript, right? But then it's a trade-off, and we talk about those trade-offs. So the big understanding now is now that they understand that there are vulnerabilities, they know to ask that question, and they can make that risk decision. Before, they didn't even understand that there was risk, and now they understand that there's risk. So then they ask the question, what can we do? Well, we can block JavaScript, so then this entire page won't work. I hit the run button and nothing happens. That's the choice they have to make. So the cyber resiliency question, yes. Now with an understanding, they can make and assess those risk decisions. So, we've got a few more minutes. Are there any further questions?
Why don't you put N equals B or D?
So N equals B or anything like that, then B would be, in this case, B's an undefined, so it could be a multiple thing, I could do B equals 0. B's undefined in this case until I define it. So I have to first define it, and then N equals B.
If you just type in N equals F, will they crash or what will happen? N equals F.
So you can see my little output over here
Oh, okay.
that our F was not defined in that case.
Okay.
Any other questions? Yes, SI-110 is fully exportable. I can't show this machine, this public version doesn't have the instructor content on it, but again, there's extensive instructor content that walks through different exercises. Almost every class session has something similar to this, where the students are on their laptops using either direct, interfacing through a web portal, their web browser, or command prompt, or SSHing into a remote machine, running netcat, running ipconfig, ifconfig, and doing stuff like that. So we have a little scavenger hunt, file system scavenger hunt early on when we're talking about operating systems and file systems, so they actually get some practice at using the command line, because most of them are fairly good at the GUI, at the file browser interface and whatnot. So, any other questions? All right, I think we're getting close to 1100, and I'm not going to stand in the way of anybody's coffee.
Thank you.